Hi everyone, welcome to Bikini Design Club. On today's video, we will teach you how you can sew our bikini pattern top Monica as a non-reversible because it includes a clasp on the back. You have another video, separate video, if you want to watch separately, on how to adjust your center back piece so that it fits the clasp that you may have at home. On this tutorial, we will show you how to adjust the clasp from 4 centimeters, which is the measurement on the pattern, to 2.5 centimeters clasp that I had available. So we will show you how to adjust the pattern to fit that specific clasp. The curves are adjusted, and you will see. You just need to follow the tutorial till the end. We also show you how to sew the pattern. This is a very, very easy one to sew, and it's half an hour to sew it? So let's start. So the first thing I'm going to show you today is how to adjust your center back for a different side clasp. So the pattern was designed for a 4 centimeter high clasp, and to know the measurement, you just measure inside here and you see how much your clasp has. So today I'm gonna show you how to adjust this one to this clasp here, but I could also do the adjustment for this one. Maybe I'm gonna do for the smaller one because it's a huge change, and so it's better. So if I divide my height of my pattern in two, I'm ignoring the seam allowances, and I do a perpendicular line here. I have my middle, and now my clasp, I'm gonna measure it, and it's 2.5 centimeters. So 2.5 divided by 2 is 1.25. So I'm gonna do 1.25 here and 1.25 here. And this will be the new edge of my pattern. Of course, when we change this, if I overlap the patterns, not the seam, not like so, but if I overlap the patterns, I know that I have to adjust the entire curve just because of this, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to do a little bit of a straight line here, and then I'm gonna start the curve, and the same on the lower part here. So as you have noticed, I didn't want to lower the height of my side seam, so I did the shapes in a way that I would end up on the same spot for my pattern as I had on the top edge of my side seam. And I'm going to repeat the process for the lower part here because I also don't want to do any change here. However, of course, when we do this, we have to make sure that this line is not creating a sticky point in the connection between the back and the front piece. This must be a smooth connection. So I will do exactly the same on the lower parts of our top. Now, the only thing missing is the seam allowance. Design here, draw the new line for your seam allowance and cut. go ahead and cut our fabrics. As my main fabric, I will be using this beautiful fabric, and as my lining I will be using a red plain fabric. Both of them are swimwear fabrics because this pattern was designed with 8% negative ease and it is supposed to be sewn with 2 swimwear fabrics. On my main side, I can decide if I want to have 2 pattern pieces or if I want to have only 1 pattern piece. I decided that instead of cutting 2 of them, which would be also valid, if you want to do it, you can cut both of them and then you place right sides facing together and you sew your side seam and you will have 1 pattern piece from one side and then the same symmetric. But I decided that I want to overlap this and I want to cut all at once, allowing me to have no side seam. I actually didn't have enough fabric from my main fabric not to have a side seam, so I chose to cut my main fabric with side seam and then my second fabric, which is the red one, without the side seam. And so I taped my front with my back, and for the cutting of my second fabric I cut it with no side seam. We now have on our table 2 front pieces for the main fabric, which I had to cut with a side seam because my fabric was not enough for me to cut without the side seam. But then on my second fabric, I cut with the side seam stick together as you saw. And so I have front and back already together on my second fabric. And of course I have my back for the 2 main fabrics. Then I have 2 small straps to connect on the back, these 2, and 1 long strap to go on the front top. The measurements for these straps are mentioned on the PDF file. We can go ahead and sew the side seams connecting the back to the front, and we can also go ahead and sew our darts. If you want to learn how to sew darts and how to have perfect without bulkiness darts, you have a specific video for that on our tips and tricks, and also another one on why we use darts. So you can check both tutorials if you want to learn how to sew them and why we use them. For now, let's go ahead, sew the side seam, sew the darts, and also prepare our straps, applying elastic. Now I have my straps here, and I wanted to share that this one, you can see that it's perfect, but these ones, you can see that they are not perfect. They have like a rush. This is because I didn't cut the fabric on the correct direction. So the long one I cut with the greater stretch horizontally, so the grain line is correct, and this one I cut the opposite direction. That's why it's doing this effect that you can see here, and if you compare, you can perfectly see that this one is perfect and these 2 are not. Okay, just a small thing that maybe it happened to you. Well, now I have here my second fabric and my first fabric, and I'm going to place right sides facing together, and I'm going to pin the neckline, the top to the lower part here, and also this small bit here. Now that I have here my main pieces and my lining, I am going to remove a little bit of the seam allowance to avoid excess fabric. So I'm going to remove like 4 millimeters here on the top edge on my second fabric, and I'm also going to remove the same amount on this edge here. So excess fabric removed, and we can now place right sides facing together. And I know it's going to look a little bit strange and off because the sizes are now a little bit different, but never mind. Pin right sides facing together just here on the neckline and also on the lower part here, and we will sew this with the overlock. At this area here, I am not going to apply elastic because we are going to create a channel with one of our straps, but all this area here will have elastic, and the elastic is applied on the main sides. Once you have sewn this, we will also sew this edge here, and usually I do this using my straight stitch machine with an elastic stitch. But I'm going to show you in detail which areas you need to sew and which areas you don't need to sew, because since we are having a lot of channels, not a lot, Annie has a lot, the swimsuit pattern Annie has a lot, this has some channeling, we do not need to sew all around. So I'm going to let you know exactly where. For now, I'm going to pin this edge here, and I'm gonna sew at least this one here and this one without elastic, this with elastic, and then I'll be back. Ready to start sewing. Again, this area here and all of this with elastic. Now that I have sewn this area here and this one without elastic, I'm going to align my fabrics. I'm gonna pin them in place. And using my straight stitch machine, I'm going to go over this area here. So we will have a channel on the top neckline here, which means I'm going to seam rip a hole of 1 centimeter in this area. But before I open the hole, I'm going on my straight stitch machine to secure the threads in this area here, and also from the whole area to downwards, so that my overlock threads are secure before I open the hole. And this is in this area. Then the strap will come all the way through here, so I need to reinforce this area here also with on my straight stitch machine with a zigzag or a small straight stitch, as you prefer. And then I'm not going to sew here because we need to leave the channel 1 centimeter, and I'm gonna start sewing here. If you want, you can draw the line that you are going to sew. Usually I don't, but to show you how to do it perfectly, I'm gonna show you. You just pin everything in place, and then I'm gonna draw seam allowance. And the same on this side here. So I'm going to sew from here on my straight stitch machine. I'm going to sew until I reach here, and then I'm gonna turn the fabric and I'm gonna sew. But here I also want to overlock here, so I'm gonna overlock the vertical line here, and when I have the overlock, which will be more or less here, I will also leave 1 centimeter for my channeling. So I will sew until I reach here. Okay, so from here to the edge there, and I stop here. Then I overlock this entire edge, and then we will sew with the overlock on the lower part here, applying elastic and flattening the seam on our darts so that this is completely perfect. When you align the lower part of your bikini top, Monica, you will see that it looks like you have excess fabric on these sides. Let me flip this. You see? But this is just because we removed the seam allowances, remember, on the top edge. So this is perfectly fine. You ignore that it looks like you have excess fabric. In fact, you don't have excess fabric. And this is why once this is ready, you will see how nice it fits and how nice it is not to have excess fabric on the second side. Here is where you can see this more clearly on the back part. It looks like you have excess fabric, but I will show you in detail and you will see that we really don't have excess fabric once this is sewn. So let's go ahead to our sewing machine and let's sew this area. Here with elastic, here without elastic, here with the straight stitch, reinforce that side, reinforce each side because we're going to seam rip here, overlock and overlock with elastic. Let's see this in detail. So on the neckline, I have reinforced on this side because we're gonna seam rip a hole here, and I have made sewn a stitch here because I'm gonna trim that edge there, and so I have sewed from here to here, and then we are going to have a channel because our strap is going to come over here. Then you can see that I have followed the line that we had drawn before and I stopped here. I still haven't reinforced this small bit here, but I'm just going to do it next. And then here I again did from the corner there until I reach the lower part here, and I'm gonna cut this small bit here. And then on this side, I also did it from here to there with a zigzag, and I'm gonna seam rip this here to create the channel. Of course, we should reinforce this area here because, of course, a straight stitch may break. So you can do this with your zigzag, or I'm going to remake it using an elastic stitch that my machine has that is a straight stitch but elastic. So let's see this again. I'm gonna seam rip a hole here. I have reinforced that side and this side. This is the neckline. I have reinforced the stitch here. Then I did a straight stitch but elastic stitch that my machine has. Then I reinforced this small bit here. I did it again here. I did it again on this side, and I'm gonna seam rip this hole. And I have already applied the elastic under the bust on the side of my main fabric. And so once the holes are open, I can reverse the entire piece using the back hole. This is how it looks once you open all the holes that we are supposed to open, okay? And now I'm going to just cut a little bit here. Without going all the way through, okay? And before we move on, we are just going to prepare to sew the back strap. So I will place my strap 7 centimeters from the edge. I'm gonna mark, and it's 1 centimeter, so my strap will be here. I'm gonna reinforce this side and this side again, open this, and then we will insert our small back strap inside with our beautiful side facing our main fabric. And we are going to sew over, cut the excess, and the back strap is done, and we are then ready to reverse the entire piece to the right side. have prepared my back clasp to be sewn in place. I have in this area here, I have a seam allowance, which is, I'm gonna tell you, it will be 2 centimeters. So I folded 2 centimeters to this side, and using my zipper foot, I'm going to do a straight stitch here, and that's it. And to create the channeling, I just stabilized my seams with my pins, and now I'm just going to create the channel 1 centimeter from the edge, straight stitch here and straight stitch here also, and repeat for this one. So the strap, the main strap for the front, is already over all the channeling that we have created, and our back strap, back clasp is sewn in place. And now our bikini pattern top Monica is finally ready. I'm gonna show you some pictures of how it looks once it's ready. And that's it for today, girls. See you soon. Bye.